Good evening. Welcome to Masterpiece Theater. I'm Jeff Deck, and tonight I'm going to be reading by the fake fireside from my book, The Pseudo-Chronicles of Mark Huntley. Fake fireplace is a little rattly tonight, so I don't know, might switch that off if it gets annoying, we shall see. But we were left partway through Mark's recounting of his adventures at his coworker Carrie's wedding. Hello, Mary. So that's going to bring us to the entry on Monday, October 4th, 2004, called Naomi and Insignificance. And he's going to have a little additional news before he gets back to his tale about the wedding. Naomi and Insignificance. Shit. Sorry. Passed out last night. Late for work this morning. Before I pick up the wedding thread again, I've got to mention more dire matters for a second. Of course, being the selfish prick I am, I'm not referring to the state of world affairs, though, of course, those are horrifying enough. Suicide bombings, rocket strikes, missiles and bombs. No, what I'm talking about is me, pure Mark Huntley news, and it's not good. First off, I'm continuing to spot aura people around D.C. Over the course of yesterday and today, I've seen 4 more purplish folks and 1 silver. Hey, Elizabeth. All told, so far I've seen 12 purples and 3 silvers. It's working out to a ratio of 4-to-1 in purple's favor. If you think of the purples as bad, and I think I've gathered enough evidence to make a good case for that, and the silvers is good, myself when I was a kid, when I had that glow, that's not a promising sign for the good team. But saying that the one group is good and the other is bad is kind of simplifying an unknown phenomenon into something not necessarily true. Maybe they're 2 different shades of bad. Maybe they're working together. I don't know, this is all crazy, and yet I have things I can anchor to. I've been followed. I've been kicked in the baby bags. I've talked, well, we'll get to that in a moment. I called Gwen earlier tonight, but for once she wasn't around to answer. So then, following some good advice, I forced myself to call my mother again. This time I asked some circumspect questions about what happened when I was 9. I couldn't refer to the incident directly, but I could lead her to a point where if it had really happened, she would either have to talk about it or gloss over it completely. So that's what I did. And, man, somebody has to give Bush or Kerry a call. My mother's got such a gift for evasion, she'd be guaranteed a spot in the next administration. Now, it would have broken my heart to hear my mother lie to me if I didn't believe she was doing it for what she believed were my best interests. And I do believe that's the reason why. She's still following the instructions that were given to her by Einer, or whoever the hell it was who messed with my head all those years ago. If she knew that I now see the same kind of atypical shit that I'd been seeing back in the original knifing days, it would scare her to death. I have to figure this out on my own. I have to find out more from Gwendolyn. I left her a message on her landline. I'm still hoping she'll call back tonight. Anyhow, Carrie had gotten over her last-minute jitters, and with a little help. The ceremony went smoothly once she showed up to it, and she and Tom with a TH became a jointly tax-paying entity under the blessing of the minister. So worketh the wonders of the Lord. The reception immediately followed, taking place in the backyard, or grounds would be more accurate, of Tom's parents' house. Estate would be more accurate. And here was the extravagance that I had been promised. They put up snow-white tents topped with fluttering pennants. As Dale would say. I won't bore you with the details, but it was a gorgeous day and a great occasion to start drinking early. Which is what I promptly set about doing as I was stuck chatting with 3 coworkers, sharing few to none of my interests. Joe and I had used up our meager store of conversation on the ride up, unable to speak about much of anything beyond restaurant mascots. And Meg, in her early 30s, and Laurel, married and in her mid-30s, are nice enough gals, but we were having difficulty coming up with things to talk about. So, you can understand why I hit that great grease of all conversation engines. The elegant bar that had been trundled into the yard was serving, among other things, Cutesy drinks specially named for the couple of the hour. Aw. I started off with a couple carries, glorified vodka tonics with cherry and Sprite mixed in. Thought about trying a Tom, but decided it sounded evil. You don't mess with the composition of a White Russian unless you're looking for trouble. After a few drinks, I built up the courage to abandon Joe, Meg, and Laurel in search of more stimulating company. They didn't seem to mind. Suddenly I felt free to be someone other than myself, beyond myself even. Someone warmer and more generous, and, dare I say it, less tortured. I ended up talking to a good number of people I'd never met before that day. There was an army of bridesmaids in peach dresses, 3 or 4 of whom were cute, but not up to the impossible standard of the one I couldn't seem to find. And I swore I could still feel heat on the spot of my cheek. Both sides of the wedding had huge families, a glorious, diverse crowd mixing in a way you'd never see back in the city, with its racial lines drawn as clearly as voting districts. I talked with cousins of the bride, siblings of the groom, aunts and uncles, and people removed at one point or another. Few of those cousins and siblings were attractive girls around my age. I knew that I should be feeling the freedom to flirt, especially under the influence of 4 Carries and a Dale. I'd taken the liberty of renaming the Long Island iced tea. And yet I found fault with each one in turn, serious enough fault to terminate conversations after only a few minutes. This one talked too much. This one didn't say enough. This one had lingering acne in spite of long-term treatments. So, maybe I was the same jerk I always was. I wondered, though, what it was that made me so cruel all of a sudden. I was no perfect specimen myself. How did I dare judge other people in such a snap? I got depressed. If it wasn't one thing, it was another. I was really a terrible person. The glittering sunlight should be burning me, sinner that I was. It was in this low state of mind that I finally ran into the hazel-eyed bridesmaid. She stood with some friends near the stage on which a band played, and she was mocking the crooning lead singer, closing her eyes and gripping an imaginary mic in both hands. When she opened her eyes again, a laugh already on her lips, she saw me watching her. "Hey, towel boy," she said, gesturing to me. "Come over here." "My name's Mark," I said. "Huntley." I probably tried to smile then, but I'd already cemented a scowl into place and I couldn't quite scrape it off. She introduced herself then. I think I'm going to call her Riva, which is a very pretty name I learned recently. It means shore in French, or bank, I guess, same thing. You have in Paris la rive gauche, the left bank. I like that. Riva. Let's say Riva Crestwood. No, Riva Crestwood? Good God, what is this, the Forgotten Realms? I'm going to call her Bridget. No, Naomi. I want the name to be just right. I guess it won't really matter. "I'm Naomi," she said. "Thanks again for helping me out earlier. You know, you were helping Carrie, too." "Yeah, I know," I said, pleased that my theory had been right. Still, I couldn't dislodge the scowl. I'd need a pickaxe or something. Naomi noticed. "Hey, Mark, you might have gotten your invitations mixed up, but this is a wedding, not a funeral." "I noticed," I said. "The bar is much less generous at a funeral." She smirked. "Have you tried the Tom?" Before I could stop my reply, it leapt out of my mouth. I decided best leave that to Carrie. Naomi's luminous eyes widened. Then she grinned. "So deadpan. Stop that. I bet you tried a Carrie or two, though, didn't you?" "Though that would be best left to Tom, right?" I winced. Unwelcome associations popped into my mind. If I couldn't shed that identity here. "Hey, what's the matter?" she said. "We should dance." "Actually, I don't really like to," I started to say. But Naomi had already turned to the band singer on stage who had just wrapped up some awful Richard Marx song. "Hey," she hollered. "My friend here wants to hear some Journey." The singer gave her a malignant look. He did give his band the direction, though, and they struck up Don't Stop Believin'. Naomi held out her hand to me, tilting her head as if to say, "Any more objections?" I reluctantly took her hand. She had caused a lot of people to look our way, and I didn't want to act like a jerk. Not that I cared about these folks in particular, but we were all Carrie's guests on her very special day. As soon as she'd secured my hand, Naomi spun me out into a cleared part of the floor and began dancing a lot faster than the tempo of the song called for. I couldn't keep up, unsober as I was. "Woo!" she called out to no one specific. "Wow," I muttered to her. "I think you went overboard on the toms, kiddo. You're definitely outperforming me." "Huh?" she said. She slowed down a bit. "No, I haven't had anything to drink, Mark." I raised my eyebrows. "Maybe you shouldn't." I stumbled, stepped in her foot. "Whoops." She leaned in, sniffed the air, wrinkled her nose. "If you're worried about me catching up to you," she said, "you shouldn't be. Smells like you've already got a big head start. How many drinks, Mark Huntley? And why are you still not smiling?" I said 5 Carries, a Dale, and a couple of Coronas that I'm retroactively renaming Naomi's. "I'm touched. What's a Dale?" "A few bottles short of a 12-pack, I said. Finally I smiled, as if the punchline had made any sense whatsoever. She squeezed my arm. "You're lucky I'm already having fun." "How do you know Carrie?" "She's like my big sis," Naomi said, flipping some curls of her dark hair over her shoulder. I tried not to be distracted. "I mean, I guess that doesn't really work because she dated my big bro way back when, but if you throw out that part, then yeah. Hey, that's my brother over there." She pointed at a tall, lanky guy who shared her skin tone. He was carrying on a serious-looking conversation with some red-haired man in a bow tie. "So you're younger than Carrie, then?" No, of course she was. She looked younger. I ventured into dangerous territory with the question, but Naomi didn't notice. "Yeah, that's how she's my big sis. I'm 22, fresh from university, just waiting to be spoiled by the world." She winked. "Stop looking at me like that, Mark." "Like what?" "How old are you? You look 24. I blinked. "Very good." "Yeah." "I'm almost 25. You just squeaked in." "I'm almost 23. "Well, whatever," I said. "Can you please make them play something else?" Naomi smiled. "What's your next request, Mark?" She'd slowed down to the normal tempo of the song by now, and both her hands were on my shoulders. "Also, can you guess my birthday?" Her habit of asking 2 questions at once had begun to irritate me. Of course, it was convenient of me to forget that I'd piled 3 or 4 questions at a time on top of Joe during our desolate ride up. I couldn't think of one damn song that I wanted to hear. "How about Anything But Journey by the I Don't Cares? And you say you're almost 23, but I'm wagering that special event doesn't happen until late March or early April because you are an Aries." I just tossed out a random astrological guess according to some general stereotypes. She furrowed her brow at me and smiled in delight. "April 2nd, you're good." So close to being an April Fool forever. "Are you absolutely sure about the time of your birth?" I teased. My funk had been left in some dusty mine corner, and I wanted another drink. "Ha ha," she said. "Seriously, though, what was the matter with you before? Were you not having fun?" If it's not one thing, it's another," I told her. Of course, I couldn't tell her about any of the things that I've burdened you with, reader. I had to be vague, but I wanted to speak some kind of truth to her. I see things I don't want to see. I think things I don't want to think. I'm turning off that goddamn fireplace. There we go. I don't want to judge too much, and I don't want to perceive too much. Where does that leave me? "Just being, I guess," Naomi murmured, and she dropped me a wink, or I thought she did. Don't take it as anti-intellectual if I suggest that you're overthinking your life, but you're overthinking your life. The band launched into a much more upbeat number, something I didn't recognize. Naomi let go of me and started dancing frantically to keep up. Be, Buddha said. Just be. Ha ha ha. Freak, I muttered. I made my best effort to dance as fast as she was dancing. I was too drunk, though. I couldn't do it. Panting the whole way, I staggered over to a plastic chair and plunked myself down. I watched Naomi dance. She looked good doing it. She was having fun. She wasn't lean like her brother. She had a healthy, curvaceous figure, a little extra around the middle. She was so vibrant in motion, I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. Too perfect. I didn't trust her. Just as I attempted to turn away with the idea to seek out a liquid Naomi instead, something way too familiar struck me about the way she twisted in the space of a particular second. It wasn't déjà vu, precisely. I knew I hadn't seen it before, but I felt like I was going to see it again. A short, like millisecond length, image flashed in my mind of Naomi in a different place and different time. Darker, not the dark of my dreams, a realer dark somehow. And this seemed like the weirdest part. She was wearing a different outfit. Leather jacket and jeans. No sound, a mute image. As quick as it had come, it was gone. I shook my head. Too much to drink. Too much. Fantasizing. There wasn't a cutesy name for water, but that was going to be next on my tab. There hadn't been any weirdness until that point at the wedding. I'd been hoping to avoid it altogether. No auras, no singing of Rat's Kingdom songs. Now this, the tiniest mental snippet, but it had lodged in my brain. I felt betrayed and a little angry. I got up from my chair and walked towards Tom's parents' palatial house, thinking I could use some distance from Naomi. I was a little unsteady on my feet. I wasn't sure where I was going, and I didn't want to look back in case Naomi tried to get my attention. I bumbled through the house, avoiding eye contact with the few wedding guests who were hanging out in the lavish first-floor rooms, pretending that I was interested in the period furniture. Were those chairs meant to complement the Italian architecture of the house? Until I wound up going out another door, stepping out into the driveway out front. Here I found only one person, a man in his 40s, wearing the same uniform as the other caterers working the wedding. He was sitting on a stone bench looking out at the road, and around him was an intense violet aura. I'd like to blame the multiple Carries, the Dale, the Naomis for what I did next. But, you know what? I don't believe that alcohol creates something bad in you. I think it just coaxes the ugly stuff out of hiding. I think you have to take responsibility for what you are. What I was then, seeing that aura person just sitting there, staring off at nothing, was angry. I couldn't believe that a purple would dare to show up at this wedding, to work at the wedding, to infiltrate himself. And for what purpose? To stalk me? To stalk someone else? To indoctrinate us all into his quasi-magical cult and make us vote for John fucking Kerry? Fuck that. Fuck him. I ran at the bastard and he didn't see me coming until just before I slammed into him and knocked him off his bench and onto the driveway. I got down close to him as he sprawled on the ground, grabbed his collar and started to shout, "You better explain just what the hell you..." Then I stopped. Reason flooding in, or maybe just fear, realizing what I just exposed myself to, what I was touching. He felt slimy, wriggly, all out of proportion to the solid material that I thought I was seeing. My hand was in the aura and I had to get it out. I let go of him. I thought I heard a child singing in my head. He stared up at me. Up close, the aura around the man seemed more than ever before to be an anti-color, not a color. Like things seen through it lost the essence of their own color. This was the closest I'd ever been to one of the auras. Discounting, of course, the one belonging to that unfortunate Miss Samuelson so many years ago. As I stared at the aura, I could see, I thought, tiny creatures swimming through the miasma, little black shapes like tadpoles or insects. The aura was tangible in a way I hadn't realized. The man's face was carefully nondescript. He would have fit right in with all the suits back in Washington. But no, it wasn't just an anonymous face. It was a face that resisted examination. Even close as I was, I couldn't register specific details about his features. As if some wizard had placed a glamour over the guy to prevent nosy posies like me from examining him too closely. The only thing I can tell you is that his eyes seemed incapable of focusing on me, of moving at all, really. Like they were painted on. Yet I knew that he was staring at me because I felt it. If it wasn't his eyes, he had some other way of communicating that he was concentrating on me. I glanced down at my hand because I felt a sudden weight in it that hadn't been in it a second earlier. A knife, long as a dagger, rested in my palm, surrounded by a silvery aura of its own. With a motion quicker than I meant, well, in fact, I hadn't meant to make a motion at all, I tossed the knife up a couple inches in the air and caught it by the handle, then thrust it to within an inch of the caterer's chest. Where the purple aura was pierced, the creature swam around the blade. Though the man's expression stayed unchanged, his aura kind of jittered and shook as if with fury. In the back of my head, the kid's voice was singing. It was singing, off key. Frère Jacques, dormez-vous, dormez-vous. I drew the knife away. Paradoxically, ever since the knife appeared, I felt I was asserting less control over myself than I had when I rammed into him. Like there was somebody sitting on my lap in the driver's seat, getting their hands all over the wheel. I liked that feeling even less than the feeling of touching this purple. The caterer opened his mouth. The words that came out had that same strange echo that I'd heard when the purple woman back in D.C. spoke. Like the words were being repeated by innumerable tiny voices that I couldn't quite hear. Your insignificance is your only protection, he said. I lowered the knife to my side and stared him right in the flat eyes. Maybe my mercy is yours. What had made me say that? I drew back from him, stood upright, and he started to pick himself up off the ground. Hey, someone shouted, a ragged voice, but a human one. What the hell are you guys doing? Guiltily, I swiveled my head toward the house and saw Naomi standing there, looking furious and scared. This had to look maximum incriminating for me, especially if she'd seen the knife. But the knife was no longer in my hand. It wasn't on the ground either. I hadn't dropped it. It was just gone. Just a misunderstanding, the caterer in his purple aura said, dusting himself off, and he looked at me. Right? Right, I said. I had watched Naomi's face while the caterer was speaking, and it hadn't changed. Apparently I was the only one who could hear how weird his voice really was. Speaking of glamours, was everyone else being fooled, or was it me? The bridesmaid shook her head in disgust. Damn it, Mark, I thought you... Forget it, I've got people to support. She turned away and then turned back for a last salvo. Get yourself sobered up, psycho. Then she stalked off. I walked quickly toward the house before the man in the purple aura could say anything or do anything now that we were alone again, and I no longer had my freaky knife. He didn't follow me. Once inside the house, I glanced out the window and saw the caterer get into a car, parked on the main road, and then drive away. Naomi avoided me for the rest of the reception, and I did my best to make it easy for her. I drank a bunch of water to calm myself down, though the encounter with the purple had already done wonders for my sobriety, contrary to what Naomi might have thought. Not too long after that, Joe was ready to go home, and we shared silence all the way back. Still no callback from Gwendolyn. Where the hell is she? I can't continue on like this. I need to know more. About the knife, about myself. Good Christ, especially the latter. Who's in my head with me? Posted by Mark Huntley at 9:12 p.m. That is our reading for this evening. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. If you liked what you heard, you can buy me a coffee or check out my books via the links in my Instagram bio. Or if you're watching this later on YouTube, you can find that stuff in the description field of the YouTube video. Thanks so much, Mary. And I also have the previous readings in this series all available on my YouTube channel. So you all take care of yourself out there. Be safe, be healthy, wash your hands, try not to go grocery shopping unless you absolutely need to, and I will see you next time.